All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the journey of becoming. I am your host, Karrie Mitten. And before we get started, a quick question. Are you ready to break through to your next level? Uplevel Your Life Consulting is where executive success meets soul aligned strategy. If you're a high performing professional or entrepreneur who has accomplished a lot, but deep down knows there's more clarity, more impact, more freedom, more you, then this is your moment. Our executive coaching is for leaders who are redefining themselves and taking a chance on themselves, building their career and putting themselves out there, ready to believe in themselves and keep going, looking for a trusted transformational guide who understands how hard walking it through can be, and with personalized coaching, proven mindset tools, and support to help you get yourself out there. We don't just scratch the surface, we go deep to unlock your full potential. This isn't about doing more. It's about continuing to believe, and build again. So let's talk about what's possible for you. Book a free clarity call today. Let's create a bold vision for the next level of becoming. Visit www.uplevelyourlifeconsulting.com to schedule your call today, because you didn't come this far to only come this far. And now, on with the show. So today we have with us Bambi, a 3-time published author, blogger, life coach, and motivational speaker. Bambi helps individuals who are navigating life transitions to rediscover their purpose, rebuild their confidence, and move forward boldly through powerful storytelling, coaching, and motivational speaking. After a 20-year corporate career and an unexpected job loss, Bambi made the courageous decision to fully step into her purpose. Since then, she's been featured on over 225 podcasts and radio shows, spoken on virtual stages, and written 3 books in just 3 years, all while building her coaching business and inspiring others to keep going no matter the odds. Her journey is a powerful reminder that it's never too late to reinvent yourself and build again. Bambi, welcome to the show.
Wow, I love that introduction. I'm
Absolutely.
gonna hire you to write my introductions.
Well, you are the writer, so let's start at the beginning. So every transformation starts with a turning point. So can you share with us a pivotal moment or a decision in your life or your business that made you realize you are meant to do what you're doing today?
Well, I would probably have to say, with probably the percentage of a lot of people, was a job loss. It was like, okay, now it's time, because I thought I was going to be able to do that forever. What I did in the corporate world, I worked for the Nielsen TV ratings. And what I did is that I went into people's homes all day long, signing them up to be part of the ratings. And in that, I had the opportunity to sit at people's tables and listen to their stories and listen to how they came about and what they have done in their lives and things like that. The hard, the depressed, the exciting stories of people's lives. Everybody wants to talk when you're sitting at their table. So I thought I was going to do that, until I was able to retire and be able to go on and speak on stages and things like that. And in October of 2024, my job was dissolved, and I no longer was employed with the Nielsen TV ratings. So I had to make a decision. I'm 55 years old. I had to make a decision. What am I going to do? Do I want to go back into the corporate world or go back into the employment world by being somebody else's employer? Or do I want to do something that is going to further me in me becoming the best version of myself? So I decided to take some of my 401k and decide to live on that, to build, to take courses, to have coaches and things like that to show me how do I launch myself into the motivational speaking world and into the life coaching world and into the world where stories could matter to an audience.
Beautiful, beautiful. And so take us back to a moment when you realized you were ready to step into your true purpose. What was that pivotal moment for you?
Well, even before I lost my job with Nielsen, I knew something was changing. I knew that because I had worked for the United States Census Bureau, kind of like doing the same thing for 10 years, going into people's homes. And then working for the Nielsen TV ratings for 10 years, going into people's homes. But I knew that I wanted more. I knew that years ago that I had a dream when I was in my late 20s. I had a dream that I was going to be on stage sharing my testimony, sharing my life, and sharing how God took a broken girl to transform her, and that I was going to be somebody that was going to be able to speak life into people. I thought it was going to be from going to door, because that is tremendous. I had the opportunity to grow as a person. I had the opportunity that even though I'm a black and white person, there's some empathy in between and there's some gray in between, that hearing people's stories. So when I knew that the company that I worked for was changing, and I could feel it in my heart. I could feel it in my spirit that there needed to be something more. And I'm not somebody that gives up. So I really had to wait for them to let me go before I would take the next plunge. So even though I knew it in my heart that I was done going into people's homes, because I never knew the home that I was going to go into. I never knew the neighborhood I was going into. I never knew the situations that I was going into. And I got to a point at 55 going, do I really want to do that? Do I really want to go to our dark dirt road for an address anymore? So I knew when they let me go, I knew that it was time. And I knew that it was just kind of like God's way of kicking me and opening up that door and saying, Bambi, the door is open. Now let's walk through it. And I think that that was part of the journey of me taking that step.
Yeah, beautiful. And I often think about, the little God bumps, the little taps on the shoulder,
Yes,
even before things are happening, right? And how many times have I not listened to that little tap on that shoulder, nudge, right? And yes, and then as we say, my grandma used to say, hindsight is 2020, right?
absolutely. Yeah, I think we're fearful. I'm a single mom. I'm a single woman. I live by myself.
Hmm.
So I have to take care of me, myself, and I. There's nobody else in my life that's going to carry my dream. So those were kind of things that were in my head. Like, oh my goodness, what am I going to do financially? How am I going to provide? How am I going to provide for my household? How am I going to hire coaches and speakers and things like that, or programs? How was I going to do that? And to take the bold step to say at 55 years old, I'm going to take some of my 401k and live the year. That was a huge decision that I made. I have children that don't necessarily like the decision that I made, but now that they see the open doors that I have, they realize that it's always been a call in my life. And there's always been an opportunity for me to share my story and to bring life to my audiences.
Yeah, beautiful.
It was bold.
I often share with my clients, that Martin Luther King, he said, you don't always see the next step, that take the next step, or jump and the net will appear, right? And that I think of that as, having, like you talked about, having a vision, right? And I know that I'm being called into something more. I'm becoming more than I am today, right? And we don't know the how that's going to happen.
No.
We just know the what we would love, and then we just get to take that step,
Yes.
take that step, knowing that the net will appear, right?
And I remember when I was in seventh grade, I had a seventh grade teacher that I wrote something and she handed it to me and she said, Bambi, I want you to come to my office after.
Mhm.
And so I was thinking she knew that that person I wrote about was me. So I was like really scared because
Mhm.
we had to write a story about a window. What do we see inside of somebody's window?
Mhm.
And I wrote about my window as a child and the trauma and the things like that that were happening in my home. But I got into her office and she said, Bambi, you have a gift.
Mm.
And there's going to be some day that you're going to become an author and you're going to write for this school to represent the school. At that time, that's that's 70s and 80s. We
Mhm.
didn't talk like that. You didn't like, talk life into somebody. You didn't like do stuff like that. And so I was like, oh yeah, 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 yeah. And and it took till I was 52 years old to write my first book.
Mhm.
And every year I would be asking God, I would go and pray on my birthday
Mhm.
and asking, is it time for me to write my story yet? And I think that, I didn't get the opportunity to write my story until I was 52 because I needed more content. I needed more forgiveness. I needed more healing. because I wanted my story not to be full of hate. I wanted my story to be full of, inspiration, that even though you've gone through the traumas of your life, we can still make a difference. And even though I spent a whole lot of time on the potter's wheel, I can still get off the potter's wheel being mended and molded and chiseled to become who I am today, and excited of the pieces that are still being added, to my life.
Yeah. Beautiful. Yeah. So what aside from being let go from the Nielsen TV, what is one of the biggest obstacles you face on your journey now? And how did you really overcome it? I mean, how are you overcoming it? I guess I should say.
Well, I would probably say, I don't have an education. I don't have a college education. I'm self-taught. I spent 27 years homeschooling my kids. When I wrote my first book, I have a 10th grade education with the GED. So those are some obstacles in my brain that affected me, throughout my life. I always felt like I wasn't pretty enough. I always surrounded myself with people that were prettier than me, so then maybe they wouldn't notice
Mm,
that I wasn't as pretty as I thought, or that I didn't think. I always surrounded myself with people that were very educated, that had been into the corporate world and were doctors and lawyers or business owners and stuff like that. So maybe I could rub shoulders with them to glean, from them, because I wasn't that person. I thought when I wrote my first book that nobody was going to read it. I thought, oh my goodness, they're going to notice, in this book that, I have a 10th grade education. They're going to notice this. And to realize that when I wrote my first book, and I've sold over 1,000 copies internationally and across the country, I realized, wow, wait a minute. I am somebody of significance. I do have potential. But it took me a long time, to be able to recognize that, because I had gone through a couple divorces, I'm a single mom, all the play the little fiddle with the ant and the fiddle, like, oh, poor me, poor me. But once you get to a point, there is no poor me. Once you get to a point that your past and your present doesn't have to define your future, you have dreams, you have expectations on yourself. And I had a way. I spent 27 years educating 6 children, and I educated them enough to be able to be great people of this world. So for me to continue to walk into a room and not feel confident in who I was, that took a lot for me to finally set all that aside and stop making that as an excuse for where I was showing up.
Beautiful. Beautiful. And so when did you make that pivotal decision, or what was that mindset shift that you had to make in order to achieve the success and confidence that you have in your life
I
now?
would say probably it started in my 40s. When I was finally, I still had 2 children left at home, but their lives were changing, around the time that I was 45. I had my last 2 went into the military, and I walked back home into my home and realized that there were no more children here. There were no more excuses. There was no more of my time being divided anymore. And I looked in the mirror and had to realize that I had to find myself. And I looked in the mirror and realized that I had things that defined me that I didn't need to be defined anymore by those. And I realized the other thing that I thought was really cool for myself, when you are stuck with yourself and you're stuck having to figure out yourself, you realize what you like and what you don't like. You realize what you said you like because you like the experience of that, but you realize I really don't like this. So I realized I really don't like ice cream. And I realized I only liked what ice cream brought. I loved that ice cream brought people together. I liked that ice cream brought memories, but I realized I didn't like ice cream. I could take it or leave it. It wasn't something like, oh my goodness, I have an urge to eat ice cream. And that took me on a journey to realize what I did like and what I didn't like. It took me on a journey of realizing that it's okay not to like some things that I liked before.
Mhm.
It's okay to not accept the things that I accepted before. It's okay to change what you liked and what you didn't like. When I moved, I transplanted from Buffalo, New York to the Golden Isles of Georgia. I realized I didn't have to stay in one area,
Mm.
that I could travel, that I could do things, that I could experience it.
Mhm.
I realized that I'm okay by myself
Mhm.
because I worked for a company, I worked for a company that I traveled by myself.
Mhm.
That was pretty profound to realize I can sit at a table and eat dinner by myself and I'm okay.
Mhm.
I could read a book on a beach by myself and not have to have somebody by me. So I think that it's in my 40s. I think that that's when it started coming about of what I like, what I don't like, what I could do, what I was brave enough to do, and when I decided to live life even afraid.
Right. And isn't that interesting? I love how you said, you find the time, maybe not in these words, but you find the time to take the pause and to really understand who you are, not defined by what you've done, right? But who you
Mhm.
really are. And I think
Yes.
it's so important as we are becoming to really understand who is Carrie. I'm not, yes, I'm a mother and a wife, but underneath it all, I do this but underneath it all, I'm more than that. And
Absolutely.
really learning who you are and what your purpose is, right? I mean,
And
yes,
realizing you bring things to the table too.
yes, yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Beautiful. All right, so now that we've learned where you were, I'd love to hear about where you are now. What's your life, how's your life, your business, your mindset shifted since making those changes? What does success look like for you today?
Oh, success looks like, I've made the last 3 weeks, I've decided to go back to making jam. I remembered when I was a kid, one of the greatest things I loved about going to my grandma's house was making jam. So I am now at a point in my life to start going back to the things that I love.
Yeah.
So one of them is jam, which is kind of funny because then I can sell it and give it away and things like that. And I only tell you that because it's like I just made a batch of jam, blueberry jam, last night, and it was like such an accomplishment that I didn't have that time to do a year ago.
Mhm.
I am loving impacting lives as a life coach. That is, for me, it's kind of like sitting at somebody's table again. I loved my job. I loved going to people's homes, but now I get the opportunity and I get to privilege to do it my way and not have a corporate world tell me what I can say and what I can't say and what I can do and what I can't do.
Mhm.
So, being a life coach, watching the aha moments pop up in a woman's life and in her eyes. And what I do as a life coach is that I I send my clients a box. And in that box is full of different projects and activities that we're going to do together on our one on one. Some of the box, one of the things in the box for some people is a a puzzle and all the pieces to a puzzle. But when they begin to start putting the puzzle pieces together, they realize it doesn't match the box
Mhm.
because we have preconceived ideas on how we thought our lives were going to turn out.
Mhm.
When we're little girls, we imagine our lives. We imagine how many kids we're going to have. We imagine the love that we're going to have. We imagine the picket fence. But as we start putting the pieces and the puzzles of our lives together, we realize that's not what our life looks like. But how do we feel about the life that now we have? So I have my clients sit and put this puzzle together, and some of them are frustrated, like they don't get the box to show them how to put the puzzle together. Some of them were confused. And so to watch my clients be able to work through that their lives didn't turn out the way they thought it was, but it's still pretty spectacular. So those are like some of the things that, one of the things that is inside of my box as a project.
Mhm.
I love the other day I was able to go and speak to, I think there were 35 women to tell about my story and to watch the emotion. There's nothing like standing in front of a group of women and sharing your story and seeing transformation happen right before your eyes.
Yeah.
My third book is coming out, and I had to write my first book to experience all the emotion and the forgiveness and the letting go for me to be able to write my second and my third book. And my third book comes out, just like I told you beforehand, I have my editor was in the hospital and couldn't finish uploading it,
Mm-hmm.
but it's coming out. And to think that I am an author of 3 books. And now your brain, when you become an author and you begin writing books and you start publishing, then you lay in bed thinking, what's my next book to write?
Yeah.
It never stops now,
Yeah.
because now your wheels are turning, and that's where I'm at now. What's the next book? Where's the next turning of the wheels of turning? So
Beautiful.
that's where I'm at right now, and that's where I'm stepping into boldly
Beautiful.
and not giving up on this
And,
walk that I'm on.
and continuing to become, right?
I
A-
love that word.
You know,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, as a coach, I believe a good coach is coach. So as you reflect on your journey and the success that you've achieved so far, what would it look like for you to take your impact, income, or influence to the next level? And what kind of support or guidance do you feel you need to get you there?
Well, I have been blessed with incredible friends that continue to push me,
Mm,
that continue to say, you've got this, that continue to listen to every podcast that I do and critique it for me and say, okay, you could have not have said this so much. You could have said this. Make sure you're changing. You have so much story. Make sure you're changing content if you want us to listen, to it. So we're not listening to the same thing.
mm,
I have, people that have poured into my life. I had a life coach during the pandemic. That's how I realized what a life coach was. During the pandemic, I hired a life coach, and it was so much fun and so inspiring that I knew that that's what I wanted to do. I didn't know I wanted to do it at 55 and losing my job, but I
mhm,
knew that's what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to impact lives.
mhm.
I've been very blessed during this journey, to find people that have believed in me, that have also, just like you said, I've been on over 218 podcasts, and they're calling me back,
Mhm.
because they feel like I had value, to their podcast. So those are things that you're looking for in your life, that you're impacting, and that people are walking beside you and kind of like nudging you.
Right. Yeah. So looking back at everything that you've gone through to get where you are today, what's the one piece of advice that you would give to someone who's still on their journey of becoming?
I would say first, my first thing that I would tell people is to forgive the things that have happened to you.
Mm,
Forgive the past, let it go, leave it there. Take the lessons from your past, take the lessons from your trauma, take the lessons from the things that have happened to you. Take those lessons, put on a superhero cape, stand in the mirror, and thank yourself that you have survived, and now it's time for you to thrive. Not to take that past and not use it as a death sentence for your life. Don't let it. I read a memoir by Viola Davis, which was an incredible memoir. And I tell women, if you want to know about people's lives, read memoirs, and you realize that your life wasn't as bad as you think it is, because
mm,
there's always something worse. But
mhm,
one thing that her counselor had told her, she said, Viola, your 8-year-old self already went through what she went through, so you wouldn't have to do it.
mhm.
So when you think about that, when you think about the things that you've gone through in your life, that part of you already did it and already went through it for you, so you didn't have to. The problem, what we do, is that we hang on to things that we should never hang on to. And
Mhm.
so I would tell women all the time, stop hanging on to things that don't do you any good.
Mm,
Stop hanging on those things that give you a mindset that you can't do something. I had to stop hanging on to the fact that, oh my goodness, I have a 10th grade education with a GED.
Mm.
I don't need to hang on to that because I'm an author of 3 books and a motivational speaker and a life coach. And I've raised 6 children and homeschooled them for 27 years. So stop looking at the disconnect of your life and start looking at the things that connected you,
Mm.
and start talking about those things.
Mm.
I don't need to go into a room anymore and have people feel sorry for me because I only have a 10th grade education with a GED. I can now go into a room and say, I'm an author.
Mhm.
I'm a motivational speaker. I'm a life coach. I make a difference into the lives of women all across the country.
Mhm.
We
Yeah,
need to continue that narrative about ourselves and
abs-
not the narrative that keeps us bound.
absolutely. Beautiful. Thank you for sharing. Well, thank you so much for sharing your incredible journey with us, Bambi. It's been such a pleasure hearing about the breakthroughs and the lessons that you've learned along the way. And I'm sure that our listeners are feeling inspired to take bold steps in their own lives. So, before we wrap up, where can our listeners connect with you and learn more about your work?
You can go on my website, healingthroughstories.com. It's all one word. That is where I do blog. That is where my program is, my 8-week program is. You can also find me on social media. It's Bambi Lynn. It's very easy to find me since there's not very many of us in this world today. So you can find me on all kinds of social medias, and you can also email me if you'd like, josephine.rstory@gmail.com.
Wonderful. Well, thank you again for being here today. I know your story will leave our listeners feeling empowered and ready to take action. So, for
Thank you very
everyone
much.
tuning in, remember your journey of becoming starts with one brave step. So, take it today. And until next time, keep embracing your transformation.